special Autogefühl episode with Thomas here today, because we have the Jaguar F-Type as the entry trim level, as it is right here, V6, 340 horsepower, and as a convertible, rear-wheel drive and manual hand drive, the manual transmission. And in contrast to the manual hand drive convertible with the lowest engine possible, we have the highest, most powerful engine here as well. As a contrast, the F-Type R with the all-wheel drive. So those both F-Type versions where we see all over the range and so much differences, like rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, V6 versus V8, convertible versus Coupé. So we are here starting with the pure Roadster feeling you can get with the F-Type. Let's go in exterior, interior and the driving fun. We'll start here with the front. The standard version of the F-Type is already very aggressive here with the air intakes, also with the lower bumper. You see it later on with the R version. The R version is even more aggressive. But of course, the standard Jaguar growler in the front and of course a very big stance on the road. Although it's rather a small car, I must say, it still has a massive appearance. And one thing is of course this very nice power dome we have here, and kind of very few design lines, but those design lines we see are very central, and that's what I love about Jaguar design. And already here in the V6 we have those supercharged air outtakes here, a very beautiful thing the Jaguar has. Let's look beneath the hood. It's opening in reverse as derived from the Jaguar E-Type. Supercharged we see it right now. V6, 340 horsepower, the entry version. It's also available in the S version, 380 horsepower. And then the V8 has 550 horsepower. All are supercharged. And the difference in the acceleration, it's, well, convertible, Coupé, V6, V8, starts here with the V6 with about 5.7 from 0 to 1 kilometers, 0 to 60 miles an hour, and goes to about 4 seconds for the V8. So 1.5 seconds is the difference by the overall. And very interesting here, it says airbag. We have on both sides. This is the pedestrian airbag, that the hood is higher a little bit in the case of a pedestrian crash, that the pedestrian can, have a little bit of a soft bumper with the hood. Very interesting thing. One of my favorite things about the Jaguar F-Type is the side profile, because this is really a simple but really central automotive design. We have 20-inch rims here. That is not standard. Usually it comes with 18, and you can get those optional, of course. With the S and the R version, you get standard, the bigger ones. And red brake calipers we have here as a nice contrast to this grey car, although I wouldn't really take it in grey. And we have some fake air outtakes. There's nothing behind it at the side. And you see there's just kind of one design line here and very strong shoulders. And that is also what I like. Even has with a convertible. That's of course just, well, even less than 1 horsepower, 340 horsepower we have here. And if we continue on to the rear, you see that the rear lights, the tail lights, are already beginning at the side of the car. Very interesting. By the way, as for the build quality, we see the gaps, maybe with the German cars, they're a little bit better arranged how all of the small gaps are. But again, this car is not 100% perfect, but it is 100% of fun. That's it for the convertible. You soon see also the Coupé, how that one is in the styling. I think here the roof is very well hidden, definitely. And if I close the roof now already for the first time, I also want to talk about how the car looks then with the closed roof, because that's always, of course, very interesting then. So then let's close the roof. Yeah, I'm always mistaking the button, like when I go front and back, what's the right way for the roof opening and closing button. And so there it is. And of course you don't get really the exact Coupé roof line with the convertible here when the roof is closed. But still I think you get it very attractive. You see it right here, there it falls down. The Coupé looks more beautiful from the outer definitely, but I will still go for the convertible. But the strong shoulders, you see, they are still remain in place here. Finally, let's take a look at the rear, and again, I must say, just the whole design is so beautiful. We have those E-type inspired lights, you know, with a round at the lower part. And you know, no matter which version you pick, it's mainly all the same. The main difference is that in the R version you got the diffuser, you'll see it later, and all the V6 cars have two pipes here centered, and the R than the V8 has 4 exhaust, 2 plus 2. That is the main difference then. Now get inside, and interestingly the door handles, either when you use them with the key or here they flip out, welcome you, and then you can get inside the car. This is the first overview. It's the standard equipment of the F-Type. Those ones are not the special sport seats, those are the standard seats. And you see there's the bright equipment, and it's very interesting what you can see right here. We have Alcantara or microfiber on the inside of the seats. That is very good for winter, both in summer times. In summer times it doesn't get hot, winter times it doesn't get cold. Real leather on the outside. Unfortunately, there's no real option yet for the F-Type where, for example, you can get leather red on the outside. That one is still missing. And then there are also sport seats available. They are, you know, offering even more side support, but then they offer only the full leather equipment. So this one here is way to go with these seats. Bright seats can be a problem, of course, then, you know, they tend to get a little bit stained, but well, they do look so beautiful, I must admit, especially when you have a dark exterior color of the car. When we look at the steering wheel, it's, you know, not too small for a Roadster, I would say. A little bit smaller would also work with the Jaguar Leaper on the inside. That is beautifully done. The interior quality of the buttons of the steering wheel, that one can still be improved, I would say. Everything else, if you more look towards the center console, that is really very well designed. You can also see the white inside color of this panic handle for the co-driver, a really nice contrast. And the manual hand drive, the manual shifting lever, has also this shiny surface. So overall, a great sensual design by Jaguar, dividing driver and co-driver seat. Now I've taken the seat, and let's begin at the inside of the doors, because everything you control with the seat is placed right here. You can see you can also adjust the outsides of the seat, how far you want to, and listen to the sound here. Really interesting because it's done with air. Then also the back part of the seat, lumbar support, in and out, memory function, and of course the lower part. The F-Type is not the best car for very tall drivers. You know, I'm almost 190 in meters, and you know, there was this funny interview part I had with Ian Callum at the F-Pace first presentation. Check that one out if you're more interested, because I was talking about Ian Callum, about tall people in F-Types. Here, as I said, the standard seats, and I mean, for the, you know, low space we have here, it is still okay, I would say. And the sport seats, well, at first I said, okay, if you're tall, rather go for the sport seats, but I'm not quite sure anymore, because those ones here are a little bit more open. They don't have so much side support. That also helps you then as a taller driver. Plus, as I said, the standard seat you can get with the Alcantara on the inside, and that's the best mix you can get for the F-Type definitely. And if you put the seat all low and all the way into the back, I'm at the moment also quite fine with the position here. We'll also soon later show you what is happening when the roof is closed. What about the headspace then when we go to our roof opening and closing part. So far, well, it's a relatively short car, and therefore you also still have a good overview, although you have a long hood, and that makes, of course, a very cozy feeling here. Well, my knees, they are a little bit caged in here at the lower part. There you can see it, that there's hardly any space left, but it does still work for me. But as soon as you think like 2 meters, really forget it, then maybe go for the Jaguar SUV, the new F-Pace. We'll also have that preview of the F-Pace. It's linked in the video description then as well, that one. Let's now close the roof, see how it is. And funny thing is that you have to put the button in the reverse direction. That is a little bit puzzling to me always. But the roof works quite fast, and compared to the XK, for example, this one can also be closed when you're driving about 50 kilometers an hour. So that's it, done. Windows also sliding up. I put them down for you again. And there we can also see how much headspace I still have with my 1.86 meters. This is the headspace I still have. So it does work when I'm really sitting centered here in the F-Type. So yeah, that works pretty well. About the sound installation of the roof, by the way, if you compare it to those acoustic roofs from Audi, those ones are way better. It is still, a little bit noisy here in the inside when you have the closed roof, but that's not the most important thing about the car, because when I have this car, I will drive open all the time. And now let's open the roof again, as you can see it from another perspective. And yeah, I think it's quite a nice system. It's from Webasto again, famous German company for those roofs, and therefore it's also quite durable. That's kind of it. You can slide up the windows or leave them down again. It also works with this central knob here. Yeah, so overall I'm quite satisfied with the roof, and because you can also see it from here, it's hidden quite well done here. Most of the guys pick the black roof here, and well, maybe also the best choice overall. But if you want to have it a little bit more spiced up, it's also available in red, gray and brown. Also, those roll bars are not available just like they are here now in this aluminum cover. You also get them in black, in red, or in carbon, or in white. So there's plenty of choice you have here. Of course, it always has to fit with the exterior color. I wouldn't pick this dark gray for my favorite exterior color. I had it once in red. Red looked really great on the car. And of course, blue is always my favorite color, and also for the F-Type. Blue exterior to the white seats inside. That would be a great combination to me. Or what's your opinion? Put me your favorite color combination for the F-Type in the comments. Storage spaces, well, they're not plenty in this Roadster, but here there's a glove box with a separate opening button, slides down here. Quite reasonable space in there, but the menu is usually placed in here. You can very well use the panic handle here, also as a driver to get back in position. 2 beverages holders we have here inside. They have some rubber knobs on here that you can adjust to the size of the beverages. And then the middle part here, also quite stable. I'm quite confident with the interior quality. They have stepped it up over the years, so when we had the very first F-Type, the interior build quality was not up to date as it is right now. So now I'm really okay with it. And then here inside, there's also a USB slot and aux in 12 volt power supply that is here. Well, you can, for example, put your smartphone in here. That is, for example, possible. And finally, there's also another, that one is optional, by the way. It's strange to put that one as an option. Come on, put it standard equipment. As an option, here is another case to hide something, whatever purse. No, purse is really fit. Very small purse. That would fit in actually. But you see, well, they have used the space they have here. And other than that, well, behind the seats, maybe if they are very much in the front, but if you have tall drivers, you also won't have space behind the seats. Taking a detailed look at the instruments, when I start the ignition, you see there's a nice effect that they go all the way to the back and to the front again. And analog instruments we have on the outside and the inside. We could, for example, see consumption and stuff. You can browse there through the menu, for example. Go up and down, whatever you need, vehicle display and board computer, for example. That means for example, we can see it right here. switching, you know, from different kind of consumption figures and so on. But the consumption figure, you have to press here at the trip button, and then you can change it also in the front. And there we see 14 liters on 1 kilometer. Well, we did some playing around here now, but well, I used less with my naturally aspirated 4-liter V8 in the XK. So those supercharged engines, well, they need some fuel. Another very emotional feature is, you see it right here, this is one even flat area. When the climate function is deactivated, when I turn on the ignition and also the vents are activated, then they slide out. This is a very emotional feature, very nice, of course. I really love this aircraft design of the vent control, for example, right here. You can push it, by the way, push the glass to open and close it. That's a really nice thing. And then also the upper part that we've shown you just is sliding down again. However, you can also have the separate temperature control for both of the sides. And I also love the, you know, when you push it and the sounds they give. So I've done a really good job here, and it's also a very clear display, definitely. And with pushing here, there is the seat heating. You can push it and then turn it. You see here 3 levels of seat heating. And in the lower part, AC on and off. And this is again inspired by aircraft. Also the warning indicators or the windscreen heating and some for the rear. There's no front screen heating here. It's just, you know, for the vent, maximum vent here. And then below that is for the volume control, 12-volt power supply, and the ignition button is right here. And even more below, we have again some other buttons. By the way, first of all, the manual shifting. Just listen to the sound when I'm doing the gears. It's a sporty sound when you put them in. You have a lot of resistance, but you know, that's really gives you a pure Roadster feeling. Then about the buttons, this one here is for the rear wing. You can activate it manually. Looks quite funny when it flips up, and it gets activated when you're just driving faster, or put in when you're driving slower. This is the famous exhaust button, activate it and get even more sound boost. You probably also heard it from the outside shots we had. And ESC, track DSC, or everything off from the stability control. We'll show that in our driving part, how that one plays out. And finally, electronic handbrake, race mode, we'll explain that one, also the snow mode in our driving part. And this is the button here for the roof. And again, I'm really puzzled, why did they do it? That I have to push it, then the roof closes, and I pull it, and the roof opens. But it's the other way around. For example, where the roof is now open, and when I pull it, it closes. Really, well, I don't know. As we move on to the trunk, first of all, let me show you the wing when I'm activating it with the button. It's quite a nice thing. Well, I think it's a good solution that we have it that way. Close it again, because those really huge fixed ones, I think they are not very elegant then, and I prefer it when it's, you know, just a straight line from the car. So, what about the trunk? The opening here is quite good. Some other convertibles have it, you know, not that easy with the access. It's not very high, and you see, well, there's one suitcase in, and there's another backpack beneath it because there's a small hole inside here, and that leaves you some space more, but of course the overall space is very limited. With 2 guys to the airport, it can already get a little bit critical, and well, there's goes some space in here, but it's not really high. So you are definitely very limited in the space here. Alright, let's start with our driving part. This is the F-Type convertible, 340 horsepower with the V6. This one is here promising really the pure Roadster feeling. And the first time ever really I drive a Jaguar with a manual hand drive, with a manual transmission. 6-speed it is. And well, my first impression is it's a really sporty one. You know, the waist for each gear, they're very short. so you can shift very fastly. And it's not that you have like no resistance, it's more really a sporty kind of resistance. And we're starting just in a normal driving mode, as you just turn on the engine and that's it. And of course, with the manual drive, you have more control over the car just in general. And for a pure roadster, that's surely a thing to consider. And we'll also soon have another tunnel test, where we can even hear the sound while driving way better. Of course, it's always good to drive in a convertible to hear more of the sound. And in this driving review part, we'll start with the city driving, which is for most of the customers the most important part, because most of the time you drive the car inside the city. Then we'll also have a motorway part and then a countryside part, and we'll also push the limits a little bit more. So stay with us in this driving part here as well. So we also see some action later on. But we're starting rather slowly, and we're also going to explain the different driving modes we have. And as I've shown you in the interior part, we also have this very nice little exhaust button here, which is optional for this kind of vehicle version, that you can boost up the sound even more. Good thing is, this here already has a very nice sound, but I mean, for driving in a city, maybe you don't want to attract too much attention. Also think about, maybe police following you. They're always attracted by, too loud sounds of the exhaust. And so it's, for the first time, especially, well, of course you always have the sound, but it's good to rather remain calm in the city. Just, to give a little bit respect to other people then, because maybe you don't want to be exhaust beaten by everyone who is driving here in the city. So we can also just go to neutral and then let the car roll. That saves us, for example, some fuel when we just want to roll the car. So there are also advantages to have the manual drive because you feel connected more to the car and the road. The Jaguar F-Type features a sport suspension from standard equipment, but however, as this one is here the entry version, this is also definitely the most comfortable one. I have driven the F-Type in several versions now, and also on dry racetrack, ice, streets, countryside, kind of everywhere. And on the racetrack, you do feel a really big difference between the convertible and the Coupé. The Coupé is 80% stiffer from the chassis than the convertible. And of course as well, if you have, for example, also has an S Coupé or an R Coupé, it's even lower than this one. And so I've driven it on the Bilsterberg racetrack, a normal convertible here, and then the R as a Coupé, and it was like two completely different cars. This one here was kind of like, wobbling on the racetrack. The other one was really a pure race car. But you only realize it on the racetrack. Here in city driving, it's kind of the other way around. The only thing you realize is that the S and especially the R versions are just, less in comfort. And so in general, for city driving, for pure enjoyment, for cruising, this one here, especially with this standard suspension, is really the best one you can buy. So you have to think about what is your purpose of using the F-Type, and if you're not going on the racetrack, you probably shouldn't land up with the R version, although the V8 is of course great in sound. But this one here, the V6, is one of the very few non-V8 engines that already have really a spectacular sound. And already in the normal mode, but we can soon also show you what the normal exhaust button here then is also doing. We also have a start-stop function that is, for example, activated right now. You see the RPMs drop to 0. I can very well see the RPM meter, by the way. That's good for a race car. Very clear display and also rather conservative layout as for the analog instruments, and I do expect that from a Roadster, definitely. My co-driver can also use the panic handle here at any time when I'm really pushing the limits, but maybe we'll use that one later then. The steering wheel is, well, it could be a little bit smaller, I would say, for a pure Roadster, but in general you have a good feeling, good connection to the road, so there's nothing to moan about there. Steering input is also very natural and direct, and we'll soon experience more of that when we go more into our agility part of this review, of course. But already for city driving, it's more important. What about if you turn front and back again, and we also have the optional rear view camera in here, and there it's also no problem. The car is 4 meters and 47 in length, and therefore you also don't have a problem with finding any parking spots. But there's also an advantage if you compare it to other pure, very large sports cars, which are also way longer and also have a longer hood and stuff. Not that good for everyday driving, but here, I mean, why not? If you don't have to transport too much luggage, but we've shown you with one person to the airport, that works perfectly. 2 persons with the airport with 2 big pieces of luggage, that could be critical. Then you have to go for the Coupé, then it will be no problem at all. Of course, if there is a car with convertible and Coupé, I'm telling you always, I would always go for the convertible, and the reason is just right here. I got a lot of light. It's not warm, 7 degrees today, but we're still able to ride with an open top. The F-Type is rather a summer convertible. If you compare it with, other, let's say, more lazy convertibles, for example, you think about an Audi A3 convertible, something in this region. Those are more optimized, or BMW 4 Series convertible. Those are more optimized that you can drive them like also the whole winter because of the wind features. Here in the city, it's no problem. Also without a cap on my head, it's perfectly fine with 7 degrees as long as the sun is shining. But as long as I'm going like 70, 80 kilometers an hour, then a lot of wind gets inside and you feel it's a pure Roadster that is rather designed for driving it in summertime. So you just have to be aware of that. But it's also, not too bad. You can have the windows at the high position here, and that already helps you a lot. We also have a wind deflector behind us, a very small one. It's not too effective, but of course it does its job. So, well, from shifting here, I'm quite satisfied. Usually I like more the transmission that have no resistance here because it just feels a little bit easier to shift. But here, of course, especially if you want to have it rougher and sportier, then you maybe also expect that you have to a little bit apply the pressure to the shifting gear lever. And so that's also fine for this type of vehicle, definitely. So I would say you hardly heard the sound when I'm just rolling here in the city. When I press the exhaust button here now, and then maybe shift down, that makes a lot of difference. And there's hardly any other car that has such an emotional sound. Manufacturers are doing a lot, for example, nowadays with sound generators. And not only with some valves in the exhaust, no real sound generators that are just artificially coming over the speakers of the car. Like we had in Lexus RCF in the Sport Plus mode, or thinking about Volkswagen AG Sport models, Octavia RS, something like that. A lot of artificial sound nowadays, but here it's really the normal deal. Those valve buttons, by the way, they will be forbidden in the long run because the trick is, it's kind of, a legal gap. Because right now, as I have is activated, especially in the V8, it would be forbidden just, from the dB, from the loudness. But as it's not activated by standard, you have to put it with a button. The legal part is just concentrating on when the button is not activated. And that's kind of a small loophole that the manufacturer is using right now. But I heard that in EU regulation, at least, this loophole will be forbidden then, and maybe the cars won't be that loud then anymore. But of course, thinking about electric cars, they are not as loud anyway then. So one thing maybe you realized when I'm driving the manual drive here now, quite often I just leave my right hand on the shifting stick. It's just, a common habit. So one big advantage from the automatic gearbox is you always keep your hands at the steering wheel, and that has, of course, also some kind of safety feeling. But especially when we later on deactivate the ESC, the stability control, then it will, of course, be a lot of fun to stay in the manual mode, because then we, for example, just remain the car in second gear and have even more control also when we slide out the rear. What we can tell you always so far, because this video is, mix a lot of different aspects: convertible versus coupé, manual hand drive versus automatic, rear-wheel drive versus all-wheel drive, and V6 versus V8. This is so interesting, really, also to me. And what I already feel from city driving here, if you pick really lowest version like we have here now, convertible, 340 horsepower, V6, manual drive, then there comes additional weight for the automatic gearbox, comes additional weight for the V8, comes additional weight for the all-wheel drive. And though this can make up to about 100 kilograms extra in weight, and you do feel that a little bit in the handling. And the funny thing is, you have less power with this car, but in the normal handling, if you're not, really on the racetrack and the speeds get too high, the V6 here feels a little bit better as for the weight balance. Because it's obviously a little bit lighter in the front, and this car already has a lot of weight in the front because of the engine, and therefore you can also slide out the rear pretty easily then, because heavy engine in the front, rear-wheel drive usually promises a lot of driving fun, as you can also get loose then with the rear wheels and spin it a little bit around. So that was our city driving party. We're now moving on to the motorway, then we'll also press the throttle. I have the exhaust button still activated, yes. As I'm on a public motorway, I also have the ESC still in place, which usually only makes sense. And you maybe also hear now that the loudness from the wind is increasing, driving 80 kilometers an hour now. Sorry, there was a 70 sign. Of course, I'm driving 70 kilometers an hour now. And it gets a little bit louder here and then, of course, and I get some more wind. But still, 8 degrees, that's really not too warm. Still okay, but above 70 or 80, what I just told you, then it will get a little bit too windy. I would normally use a cap then, but on video shooting I usually don't use a cap because it looks a little bit weird on camera then. And this is really a car, you can just use it for cruising. It's really perfect fun, also comfortable enough. Not the best for tall drivers, as I've told you, of course, but still reasonable as for the comfort. But it's always ready. The cat is always ready to start its crawling, and really ready to send everyone else to hell that is behind us or next to us. So I'm really awaiting now the passage where we can increase the speed. And it's a little bit different than for example, with the R model. You more have the feeling always like, oh, I have to go now, I can't wait anymore. Here with the V6, with a 340 horsepower engine, you're a little bit more relaxed. You don't have the urge to press the throttle all the way to the end all the time, even if you can, of course. Also, something about the acceleration. There are separate acceleration videos from the F-Type also linked in the video description. But here, for example, now I switched to the third gear already, and let's go like 70 to 110, something we can do right now. Let's go. That's it. And you already heard the sound. Of course, the V8 sound is even stronger, but I'm really satisfied already with this V6 sound, and it's still suitable, that you don't annoy too much people. And then, if you can control it here with the button, you can, for example, deactivate it in the city and then activate some nice sound and outside the city. And what you already hear now via the sound, driving 100 kilometers an hour, is not really that much fun here then in the F-Type convertible. If you think about other, rather calm convertibles, I tell them so far, then it was no problem even driving 120, 130. So again, you have to be aware. This is more a countryside convertible for summertime, definitely. You can compare it with the wind features, for example, with the Audi TT. What I can also see in my rear mirror now is that the wing has flipped up and it's automatically done above about 80 kilometers an hour. Then it flips up and gives up a little bit more downforce at the rear part at higher speeds then. So motorway driving, well, not that kind of relaxed, but what we can test here, we also have a fixed gear that is to save some fuel, hardly any good acceleration possible then, but what is interesting, 6th gear, 100 kilometers an hour, straight, not uphill, not downhill, and we are about 2000 RPMs. So, you know, a lot of people are always interested of how high or low the RPMs go when you drive just 100 kilometers an hour. So 2000 RPMs. So you can also drive that calmly when you want to, of course. Here again, the suspension, I can just recommend a standard suspension in the V6. When I'm going over some bumps here now, if I would do that with the R, would be really less comfortable, definitely. So especially for those joy rides, I would rather go for the V6 version. It's funny, you just accelerate like 2, 3, 4 kilometers an hour, and if you have that exhaust valve activated, I mean, you don't really need any music in this car. The music comes from back there. And I mean, everyone who is really interested in cars will understand that. Let's go to third gear again, do some overtaking, also test the agility. Nice, really nice. Of course, you do feel a power difference, especially when you're going uphill and accelerating at the same time with the V8. Then with the V8, you're going uphill, you don't really realize you're going uphill. You have kind of like no resistance at all. Here in the V6, I do feel that we're going uphill. So this is the main difference then. Of course, you can most of the time use more power, but do you really need it? That's the question. So, and now our motorway part will be soon finished, and we're going to the most fun part, going on the countryside road. And we also have this tunnel part done in our famous test. And we'll also have some serpentines road going up. The car is very light and very short, and so also when I hit the brakes, I come to a standstill pretty quickly. Now it gets even more silent again. I just love it with the sun cruising around here. And I think I can almost tell you so far, I mean, if I had to pick the F-Type, and even if if budget wouldn't play a role, I'm not sure if I would pick the top version, because this one here feels really balanced, you know. There's always, also just with every car, also SUVs we test there, most of the time, there's like 1 or 2 engine versions that are really the best suitable for the car. And it's not always the most powerful engine, because maybe you just have too much wheel spin then, or the car gets too heavy. And I think the V6 is the best suitable for that one here. I think with the Jaguar XK, with the bigger model, there the V8, it had 5 liter naturally aspirated. That was the perfect engine. Also not the one that had the supercharge. No, the naturally aspirated one. That was the perfect fitting engine for the car. But here I think it's the V6, because it's also obviously a smaller car. And you also have to think about the budget. This one here starts about 70,000 bucks. The R, 120,000 bucks. So I'd rather get 2 of those and give 1 to my cameraman, for example. So I think this is here the pure enjoyment now with the F-Type convertible, driving with open top. And just to show you the difference, I think you hear it on camera, this is the exhaust activated. Now it's deactivated. And the car is relatively silent. So it's good to have the choice depending on the situation you are in. Of course, we also have some other driving modes here. For example, we're only today a snow driving mode. This one here now is reducing the throttle input. That means when I press the throttle now, I don't have this immediate response. And it can be very useful for driving in snow if you maybe don't want to have it just as a secondary car, as a primary car. And then we also have this stability control, and as we'll also show you when driving the R on snow, even with the V8, you can drive it on snow. For example, if snow mode activated and all of the electronic stability activated, it is still possible. It's not like you cannot move the car around then. So here again, pressing the throttle and no direct reaction. That is the snow mode then. And I mean, why not having it? And then there's also the race mode. And in the race mode, the exhaust button is activated as well, so the valve is open. And then we have the sound, and the race mode also gives us a little bit more flexibility. It draws back the electronic stability control a little bit more, increases the throttle input, that I don't have to press the throttle that hard, that some reaction takes place, and makes the car also, in every kind of respect that can be controlled, a little bit stiffer and directer. And then we can also draw back the electronic stability control, and we're moving towards our more flexible parts of our ride, and then we can also test that one. So I'll stay in the race mode now. We can enjoy more of the sound of the car. There it is. Now some cornering. It's almost like riding a go-kart, a very direct feeling to the car. You don't slide to the far out corners. No understeering at all. Understeering is something that this car hardly knows. And that's a really nice thing. If it knows something, it's oversteering. And I recently heard some nice story what famous German rally driver Walter Röhrl said about understeering and oversteering. And it is said that he said about understeering is when you see the tree first, and oversteering is when you feel the tree first. Just think about it, and it makes sense. It's a really, really funny thing. So, and we can already, for example, go into the track DSC. Also shows me in the middle screen. And track DSC means that the electronic stability is drawn back a little bit more. On dry road, it doesn't make such a huge difference. If you check our snow driving part with the R, there it really gets obvious that until you have even the track DSC activated, you cannot really play around with the car. It's still a little bit held in place from the stability control because the outer wheels are then reduced in the torque and keeps you in place. But we already start right now, and then later on, like in a couple of minutes, we deactivate it completely, that we can also play with the rear just a little bit. Talking about the torque, what is also interesting, one of the main differences we don't have here. Nice, so nice. With the track DSC, even more driving fun already. We do not have the torque vectoring here. The R version has the torque vectoring, and that means that in very fast corners, also the speed, while also hitting the throttle, is reduced in the inside wheels then of the corner, and that kind of pulls the car into the corner and moves it around even better. Again, this is a feature that mainly makes sense for the racetrack. You will not miss it in everyday riding. And it just seems like we are approaching our tunnel ride part. Race mode. Exhaust valve open, and there's a lot to enjoy sound-wise. And I know as I was driving the F-Type the first time, I had the V8 version, and it was one of the very rare cars where my reaction was a little bit out of control, and I was really happy like a little child when hearing the sound. So prepare for the very nice tunnel with the sound now. Really looking forward to it. Then we'll have our main agility part. This is so nice, even when you're waiting at the traffic light with the convertible, you don't feel in a hurry. You always just feel relaxed as you're close to nature. You smell, of course, also some fume from the exhaust sometimes, but you also can smell the trees and stuff like that. And so, who is allowed to drive now? Isn't it me? There it is. Gotta be kidding me. In the race mode, the sound is even better. Second gear. Driving really slow now, that I can apply some throttle. So let's see what we can do sound-wise. It's music. I'm really a friend of, for example, CNG engines or also fully electric drives, meanwhile, definitely. But when you hear sound like these, the racing heart still gets activated. And I would say You know, if you're not going fully electric, maybe about this one. That is, you know, it's still paying off when you want some combustion engines with this kind of sound. Really very nice. Thumbs up, please, if you like that sound. And I mean, latest in this situation, you don't really miss the V8. And now we come also to our most fun part. And we just tested it with a track DSC that is still giving us a little bit of the stability. That means when I'm really pushing the throttle here now in the corner, but maybe added a little bit of the wheel spin, but the car is really still kept relatively stable. And so this is a good choice if you want to have a lot of fun already, but you're not, you know, the most experienced or most skilled driver. And of course, safety-wise, always a good aspect, because to deactivate, you should rather do it, you know, on racetrack parking lots where you have a lot of space to do stuff like that. Such a nice sound. Enjoy this here with me. Third gear. The sound in third gear is especially very good. Also when you're coming from the lower RPMs. But of course you can also go to the second gear, then it's even more explosive. Wow, really cool. For the very last corners, and I'll activate DSC and then hold the button, and that means beep, ESC totally deactivated, because this is a very steep corner, very sharp corner, sorry. And that means, for example, turn in, also use a little bit of clutch, then I could slide around the rear, you also heard the tires. And that's also good with the manual hand drive. You can not only use the throttle, also use a clutch a little bit. And then you can also have even more fun. Here, this was just throttle here now, for example. So it's also, when you're in the second gear, it's enough just to apply the throttle to have a little bit of the spin then in the rear. That works pretty well. And well, I can just recommend you it when you have practiced it a little bit, you know, on a parking lot or something like that. Otherwise, you know, not that you throw your precious F-Type into the bush. So let's go for it one more time. So again, now everything is off, stability control wise. Going downhill and braking. Nice sound here from the rear again. So great. And with, for example, when you want to turn around the car here now, first gear, turning in totally, a little bit of a clutch. Then you can also turn around the car a little bit on standstill almost. That reduces the turning circle. Let's do it here maybe again. See it here. That was kind of one U-turn now, 180 degrees. No problem with the car because center of balance is quite in the middle and it just feels so agile. You can do anything with the car, especially if it's just in that pure setup here with the manual drive and of course with ESP deactivated. So that gives you a lot of heartbeat, I can tell you. And one of the most fun cars to drive, definitely. I mean, there are more, yeah, that's, sometimes you can miss a gear. That doesn't happen with automatic gearbox. Well, overall, there might be faster cars. Porsche are surely better on the racetrack as for the lap times. But this one here, to me, is one of the most fun cars to drive overall. Now to some very different version here of the Jaguar F-Type. we move on from convertible to Coupé, and from the very basic version with manual drive here to the F-Type R V8, 550 horsepower, and this one here is also the optional all-wheel drive. What we see the difference, for example, that we got an even stronger low bumper. Everything is in this very dark and sporty, aggressive scheme, and we also have the R logo in the front, and the car sits even lower. In the side profile we see 19-inch alloys. They are quite huge, but they look a little bit smaller because they're connected with winter tires right now. Also brake red calipers as a nice contrast we have. Then the basic difference, of course, between the convertible and the Coupé is this Coupé ending here. So beautiful, and it accentuates these huge shoulders here, so powerful. And therefore I love the design of the Coupé. However, if there is a car that is available with Coupé and convertible, I would always go for the convertible. What about you? And in the rear we have the special combined AWD with the R logo, and major difference, the V6 version have two pipes here in the center one, and the F-Type R with the V8 550 horsepower supercharged, this one has 4 exhausts here, and they are split 2 plus 2, of course. The most dramatic appearance. One major difference is, of course, the trunk, because here you have very easy access and, of course, way more space than in the convertible. Going to the airport here will be no problem, and well, that's one major advantage, but of course you then cannot open the roof. Let's see inside the differences. If we can see it here, I mean, we got these bright contrast switches. It's just a question of color choice, of course. And then the R interior, well, it's not that much difference. We also have the Super Sports seats here, and we just have an R logo on the steering wheel. But basically, well, there aren't so many differences. You mainly pay for the engine version, and you see you get some more visual stuff here. But basically, you can get it for each of the same F-types. So let's have some fun with the F-Type R. We're starting with all the stability control in place, and you feel the difference from the suspension. It's way harder. Normal driving mode, of course, we already got some wheel spin in the rear because we just have so much power to apply. But the electric stability control holds us generally in place, of course, a little bit. Let's see how far we can go with that one. If I just really hammer the throttle, what the electric stability control will do, you see I slide out with the rear, but then I just get slower. And then the car is basically in control again. And there's also the snow mode available. So if you push this selector in the middle console up, and then the throttle input is more gentle, you can control the car better on snow and ice. And well, you might be afraid having such a powerful car in such conditions, but if you really push it that way to the snow mode and be a little bit gentle with the car, it's actually perfectly fine. So there's not much problem. And if you want to really spin around the rear, you see I was just hitting the throttle now and not much more is happening then. We really have to go into the other modes, for example here now into the dynamic mode, to make more stuff happening then. And in the dynamic mode, we still got some of the stability control in, but wheel spin is already allowed. I'm not hitting the brakes at all, and especially the wheels on the outside of the corner, I feel that they are reduced in the speed to keep the car stable. So even in the dynamic mode. And yeah, well, you can think about when you're, for example, on the dry racetrack, that still helps them very much. So you can slide around the rear a little bit, have some fun, but still remain basically in control. Of course, it's rather low speeds. There's not so much difference then between the V6 and the V8. It's more really like on the dry track where you can really feel the difference. Of course, the sound is a little bit different, but also mainly when you sit outside. Now let's test the track DSC. That's stability control one step pushed further away. Then I can play around with the car more. I see I can slide out the rear. The engine is giving us some commands. That is a lot of fun now. And that is a good possibility, you know, not to let the car totally freely run around, but have some drifting fun already. Oh, I really feel how rough the suspension is. Especially also in comparison to, for example, the Jaguar sedans like the XF. Here, when I let this rear slide around, wow. Gives us some sounds also from our camera equipment. Really been rough, this ice terrain here. And definitely not the best car to slide around on ice because it's not that comfortable then. So, and then there's the last step when I put in the ESC again and then hold it. There it is off. Also gives me a warning indicator. And that means full control over the car. And just have to be secure. I'm not touching any other car. So, let's go again now. Oh! Let's go in line. There it is. And now you hear really that the engine is working. And I can really press the issue. You see, I have to counter steer quite a lot. But it's also, of course, a lot of fun that if you can move around the car freely. But that's now is really nothing you should do, you know, just on a, you know, when you're not on the testing area, because here, just a little bit more, too much throttle, and you almost spin around. You have to slow down a little bit. So much power on the rear axle, you can never put it on the ground. And the all-wheel drive, well, good thing. I also feel that I'm a little bit pulling at the front. But as more bumps we get here on the ice track, the more uncomfortable it also gets to ride. So we'll change the track now a little bit. So 4.47 meters, by the way, the total length of this car. And that means, well, it's a relatively short, of course, a rather compact car. And that means you can have a lot of fun also when you're in dry conditions. You see here, I have to use the brakes then here now as well, as there's no stability component. And here, when you're just sliding around, then that's kind of it. But here, of course, you can also, with such a small, short car, you can also keep the drift a very long way. And that is, of course, also a lot of fun. The car is sitting that low, I have to really watch the road. When there's some snow, some small snow hills turning up, that I don't hit the ground with the car. You have to really be careful with that one, definitely. But of course, a lot of fun. I mean, you've also had there it is. Yeah, you also hear the engine. And we also had the V8 on the racetrack again. And yeah, it was, of course, a little bit of a difference. But you also have to imagine this one here, the V8, also has more weight. It means it's not always good to have just more weight, and sometimes it can even better to go for less weight, for example, with the V6. What do you think about our drifting action here? So how do we close our story here today? It's really the question, what is the purpose you are buying the car for? I personally, I would really go with rather the standard version to have the pure Roadster feeling. I'm not the biggest fan of the manual transmissions. Here, this one was really good. It's really fun to drive, but I think I would take this car, maybe with another exterior color, and then with the automatic gearbox, €2,500 extra, and then I'm kinda done, you know, and then I pay about 70,000 bucks and I get a really nice equipped F-Type. The R version is really paying off. I mean, yeah, well, the sound is cooler, yes, even more. But here you already have a very great sound. Other than that, the R version is more really something for the racetrack. That's, I think, the basic conclusion, and I want to hear your comments on which version you would like to drive with the F-Type.